Hello, everyone. Melanie here with CGL Recruiting. Boy, what a year this has been for hiring. And I want us to take a moment and talk about what just happened and the effects of what this is going to do to future hiring, not only within the US, but across the world. This, again, has been a year like no other. And we need to kind of sit back a little, I think, and look at what's coming forward for the years to come, how to best position yourself, not only looking at yourself for getting your next job, but on guiding your career going forward, because this just caused a disruption that is unlike any other. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, please take a moment to do that now. If you feel like this data is helpful, as always, please give us that thumbs up. It does help with our channel, and we're trying as best as we can to get as much information out there for job seekers as we can. Okay, let's take a couple of minutes now and let's talk about the future of hiring. And this has got data that I pulled from a variety of different sources. Specifically, we did an HR survey where we got a bunch of HR people that we polled and asked a bunch of survey questions. This has data from McKinsey and Company. It has information from the Pew Data Research. It has data from lots of different sources. And I will try to quote some of them as I can, but let me know if you have other questions on it by just putting a comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. I think we need to understand that what just happened is going to cause us all ripples going forward into the future. And we need to kind of understand what those ripples are, so we're going to all know how to react to them and how to best position ourselves going forward. So let's take a look first at the job market perspective in general. And this is looking at the current workforce. And so this is everybody who right now is unemployed or looking for a new job or doing a survival job and trying to get back into their career. And this has definitely been the most difficult conditions for job seekers that there has ever been. Ever. Not just in the US, but globally. It has been like no other job search ever. There's so many people on the market and so few jobs available. And it has caused a lot of bad behaviors to actually come out in the recruiting process. And I hope that we're going to be able to help influence those going forward by stopping those with some of the data we're going to be sharing with HR from our job seeker survey. But if we look now at this job market perspective, the first thing I want to talk about is the Great Recession. And let me make this a little bigger so you can read this if you want to follow along. When we had the Great Recession, this was the time period, and some people quibble a little bit about month start and stop, but it was generally from December 2007 through June of 2009. And in this time frame, this is when we had that giant bubble burst in the economy. And in the US and definitely in other places globally as well, unemployment increased by 8.8 million during this time frame. Now remember, this is 2007 through 2009, right? And it resulted in an unemployment peak during that time frame in the US of 10.6%. Well, that is pretty substantial numbers to be looking at. But when you consider that was the Great Recession, and you look at this time that we just went through, which McKinsey and Company, I believe they were the ones that came up with this moniker, is they're calling it the Great Reset, because it's reset so many different, ways we look at things and, consider things, and definitely in the job market. And this Great Reset, during this time frame, the unemployment rose higher in the first 3 months of COVID-19, 3 months, than it did in the 2 years of the Great Recession. 3 months. That's just absolutely crazy to me. And then the unemployment rate in February went from 3.8% in the US to in May at 13%. That is a huge uptick in a 3-month time period. And there are lots of individuals. If you go out and do some research on this, you're going to see lots and lots of different people giving information and data saying that that number is way too low, that they were not accurately representing that number. And why is that? Well, There were a lot of people that were doing, home-based businesses. There were a lot of people whose businesses just went out that didn't get included, or people that weren't eligible for unemployment. There's all these things that people are saying that they believe that number was a lot higher. And I don't know if you guys remember or not, but I think it was like September, October. There were some states, specifically even California, that stopped reporting their unemployment claims to the Department of Labor for several weeks as they tried to get a handle of just how many people were applying for unemployment, and also to get a handle of all the people who are trying to scam the system. So it has not been a year like any other. So that's looking at the Great Reset job market, right? Now let's go further and say, what are these other ripples? Well, let's take a look at the future workforce. And let me zoom in again on this so you can see it a little bit better. When we talk about the future workforce effect, if you consider some of the places where the kids that eventually are going to be entering the workforce, if we look at Fairfax, Virginia, and they have one of the largest school districts in the US, and the percentage of middle and high school students that are earning Fs in at least 2 classes jumped by 83%. Those are kids, we're talking middle and high school. They're going to be entering the workforce, in the next, 0 to 6 years. And they're failing by 83%, 2 Fs. That's just crazy. All of that education that's being lost, and that's one school district. Then you look at like St. Paul, Minnesota, where they had released some statistics showing that 40% of their high school students are failing. And Alabama announced that they have 5,000 children who just never showed up for this school year. They didn't go to online classes. They didn't do anything. They just did not show up this school year, and they're trying to track them down. Are they just sitting at home? Some are concerned, are those kids taking care of younger kids at the house, and that's why they're not doing either online or in-person school? The net is there's been a huge educational disruption in our future workforce. And that is definitely going to cause us problems and issues going forward when we're looking and relying on this part of our population to move into the workforce in the future. Let's keep going and looking at some of the other data and statistics, because I think it's important, again, you understand all of the ripples. So let's look at those that we classify as the entering workforce. And so the entering workforce are those individuals who just graduated from like high school. They would have graduated like in May of 2020, or graduated from college in May of 2020. We're looking at kind of that time range. Oh my goodness, those individuals graduated in the worst job market ever. And you think it was hard to find a job if you had experience? Try finding a job when you have no experience and you're fresh out of school. It has been crazy tough times for them. A lot of them had internships that got canceled. And so they have been doing what? Well, 3 in 10 young people are neither working nor in school. And that is a huge concerning number. 3 in 10 are neither working or in school. So that means they're just sitting around doing nothing, or trying to find a job and can't, or having to take care of younger children that are not in regular school, or a variety of other things. And the reality is we need this subset of the workforce. Every day that they are out of school and not jumping into a job, especially in the profession that they may have gotten a degree in, they are losing some of that knowledge. If you don't use it, you lose it. So they're going to have to relearn it, or it's going to take a longer process for them to come up to speed. And it's just, they're like a lost generation as far as the workforce goes. Excuse me, I think I'm going to sneeze. Anyway, so this is a ripple that, again, is going to continue to hit us. So we need to continue looking at how are we within the workforce going to address these individuals. We should be the ones that are in the workforce coaching and mentoring these people right now to help them get a great start. Every generation learns from the generation before it of how what is organizational maturity? How do you manage within a company as opposed to an educational setting? And this group has lost that ability to do that. So the next thing that we have is the exiting workforce. And this number is, again, very, very concerning to me. The numbers from the Pew and McKinsey and all of them, the third quarter of 2020, 28.6 million baby boomers in the US reported that they were out of the labor force due to retirement. 28.6 million. Now, oh my goodness, I hope we can lure some of these people to come back into the workforce and out of retirement. We already knew we were going to have a labor shortage when all of the baby boomers went out to retirement. But now a bunch of them, instead of taking, just getting laid off, a lot of them took retirement packages early. Or a lot of them are just like, I'm not beating my head up against a wall for 8 months looking for a job. I think I'm just going to retire and be done. And what happened? We just lost this incredibly talented group of professionals with all of this amazing knowledge and data that didn't have a chance to get passed down to the next generation of workers. And losing that valuable, those skills and competencies, and all of that knowledge is just going to be devastating going forward to the workforce. So we are going to have to look, I think, at how do we get some of them lured back in when everything turns back around, or how do we get them committed to helping to train this lost generation? How do we make that connection that they didn't get a chance to pass down their incredible, information and education and everything else to that next workforce? So now, when we look at those different things, we also need to consider this, looking at this from a global effect. And there's the countries that are more first world countries do support a lot of the third world countries trying to help where they can. Some of course do more than others, but everybody's trying to help. And we're in a situation where donations are down while needs are up. Needs are definitely up, not only domestically, but globally. And we also have a huge ripple that's occurred where individuals who in the past were able to go to another country to get a formalized education, to where it maybe wasn't offered in the country that they were in a specific area or specialty, and were able to go to these other countries, to get this additional education and then bring back all of that skills and knowledge to their country to help, right? To try to help the world as a whole. And what just happened is they didn't have that opportunity in 2020. Lots of students who were here in the US and in other countries that were on visas and stuff, if they were not in session in school, they were doing it online, it didn't qualify for their visas. And a lot of them had to return home. And a lot of ones that would have been accepted into programs, it didn't happen as the universities did this because they weren't taking international students as many as they were previously. And that is devastating to this population. Now, it's not something that we can just make up overnight because there's a limit, right, to how many the universities and colleges are going to be able to take going forward. But again, this is one of these ripples that we're going to see in the workforce. And we need to start considering, how do we address this and how do we move forward, knowing that we're going to have shortages in a lot of different areas, not just domestically, but globally. So then, looking at the impact on hiring overall, if we consider, and let me zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little bit bigger. So we did do that HR survey where we took a bunch of different HR people. I had 100 and something, and I don't remember the exact number on the top of my head, sorry, but that completed this survey for us, asking all this kind of questions about the impact on hiring. Now, I do want to say the majority of the people that did reply, there were some international, absolutely, but the majority were US-based HR people. And of those HR respondents, 75% did state that COVID, of course, had negatively impacted their hiring in 2020. No surprise. but 64% stated it will impact their hiring for 2021. And so we did ask further and say, okay, well, tell us, where do you think, what were all the different changes and effects? Remember, companies have had to adjust overnight to changes on what kind of employees are they going to hire. Do they want to hire full-time employees, or do they want to instead do more contract and temporary, because they're unsure? One day their company is open, the next day their company has to close down and everybody work from home. So there's been a big switch to this contingent workforce as opposed to the full-time workforce. Where is that going to go forward? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see how vaccines and everything else works as to how that comes about. And then they've had to do a lot of other switches, right? They've gone to virtual interviews of candidates where before they were doing face-to-face, virtual tours. You're going to be working in a manufacturing plant, and the first time you see it may be on a virtual tour as opposed to getting an in-person look at that facility. And they've also had to change their interview practices. Some of them were very strong on, bringing you in person and doing you a panel of 4 people. Then they couldn't. So there's been tons of changes in the hiring practices. And what we're hearing is that those are going to continue because it is way more cost effective to be interviewing people virtually than it is to be flying people all over the place to come in for interviews. So I don't think it's going to stay 100% where it is. I don't think anybody feels that. But there is going to be now a change in the hiring processes going forward that will be more virtual. It won't be seen of, oh, we can't do that, because we've already proven that it can be done. And then going forward, looking at those hiring practices, we also have them working through the virtual onboarding. And there has been a lot of HR conversation in some of the HR groups I am that how do we get the same cultural assimilation in of people if we don't, get a chance to meet face to face? How do we do this all virtually? And there's also been IT challenges. Not everybody is as good on computers as others, and people that are having to be sitting working from home, that has been an issue. Not to mention, of course, the relocation challenges, where it's because everybody can work from home. Do you continue with a model of relocation? Or do you have relocation for just certain positions that you need in like a lab or in a manufacturing facility, but office workers, not so much? Other things, I want to cover one more thing before we kind of wrap up a little, which is the 2021 hiring plans. And we did ask, and let me make this a little bigger so you can see this. We did ask the HR people, what are you thinking your hiring is going to be? And, it does look like that first quarter of 2021 is going to be where the majority of the hiring is going to be, but there is still a pretty strong undetermined number out there. And I should say, again, this is mainly US figures from that survey, not so much international. But what I think is going to happen is as that vaccine proliferates, we're going to see more and more hiring. And there's going to be this huge glut of workers who've been trying desperately to find a job that are going to then be picked up. But I think if we just focus on that and we don't focus on all of these other ripples that are going to be affecting the overarching job market, the careers, I think we're going to have some huge, huge issues. We have got to figure out, how do we catch up those individuals that are going to be entering the workforce in the future? Do you want, when you're trying to lead a team, have a team of individuals who missed that level of education or missed that level of competency development? So how are we going to come together as a workforce and a labor force to be able to address those challenges? We're going to have to work hard at it. We're going to have to work really hard. For you, if you are a current job seeker, game on, because 2021 is going to be lots and lots of hiring done very, very quickly. So you're going to have to be in it to win it to get the job that you want going forward. And we're here to help. If you haven't seen it yet, our 2021 resume template format has come out. Our other HR survey data has come out on what HR people are looking for on your resumes. do's and don'ts, things that we could not include in the first resume video. And we also have more and more survey data that's going to be coming out over the next couple weeks. So hang in there, because this 2020 job search is coming. But I want us all to keep our eyes on the longer term, and that is how we're all going to change and adjust for these ripples that are now going to be occurring in the labor force today and in the future. All right, everyone. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.